what you are looking at right here is a brand new Honda CRF450RL. There's a lot of letters and numbers in that name, and later on in this video, I'm gonna explain what all those letters and numbers mean. But essentially, this is a large displacement Honda Dual Sport. So it's street legal, but it's also a pretty aggressive dirt bike. It's got Honda's 449cc Unicam engine. It makes, according to published reports, around about 40 horsepower. So it's got plenty to get it down the trail. And right at the beginning of this video, we're gonna get our bike expert, Andy Smith, out on this to see what he thinks about how it rides. As always, we're here at IMI Motorsports Complex. They have a sweet dirt track. They also have an asphalt track. So if you are in the Boulder or Denver area and you want to put your vehicle to the test, this is a place to do it. All right, Andy, so we've had a chance now to ride it around for a little bit. What do you think?
It's a Honda. It's a blast.
That's a good thing, yeah.
It is. Really, I can't say enough good things on the first part of the ride here. Stock bike right off the bat. Really just awesome to get on a bike and feel confident like this. I mean, you saw me on my two-stroke. That's one thing. That's a trigger. But this is very smooth, so it's easy to go fast. It started getting heavy. Heavy, front end especially.
Feeling the weight?
Yeah.
So do you think the 47-pound difference between this and the motocross version of the bike, do you think that would help a lot?
Oh, very much so. Weight is everything. I thought for sure compared to my new Dunlops on my KDX that these would be not much fun, but they worked well. I really couldn't get over how well they stuck.
It's good to know, especially for a street legal tire.
Yeah, for sure. Front end is a little bit soft on the edginess compared to a motocross tire, but no, very confidence inspiring by the time I got a second lap in. I was like, wow. Because when you're smooth, that's a great way to go fast. This bike gave me great opportunity with that.
Now, what'd you think of the suspension? How did that all feel?
This actually felt pretty good. It felt light at first. Where the laps kept going on is where things started getting a little heavier on the front end. But I was surprised on how nimble it was when I first got out on it. I was expecting it to be a little bit slower in response.
And would you say it's the same story with the brakes? The brakes feel pretty good?
Brakes are awesome. If they brake really well smooth, they're good brakes too. So I would have no issues with these on the street.
This engine right here is the centerpiece of this Honda CRF. This, like I mentioned, is the 449cc Unicam engine from Honda. This is a pretty well-liked motor, and over the years it's just gotten better. Honda does not publish an official power number for this engine, but again, according to published reports, in this CRF450RL, which is the street legal version, it's around 40 horsepower. Now that's way detuned from the CRF450R, which is a motocross version of this bike. That bike's making around 55 horsepower. And that big difference mostly comes down to making this engine have a little bit more longevity for street use. But even so, the maintenance intervals on this bike are pretty rough. For street use, they want you to change the oil every 600 miles. But then again, using this on the street is way different from using it off-road. And I have an actual quote from the user manual here that says, this maintenance schedule is based upon average riding condition. That means on the street. Machines subject to severe use require more frequent servicing. So if you're riding this really hard off-road, the user manual wants you to replace the piston and piston rings every 8 races or 30 hours, and even things like the drivetrain every 4 races or 8 hours of riding. So if you're planning to ride really long distances, the maintenance on this bike might be something that you want to consider. Now real quick, let's talk suspension. Up here in the front you have a 49mm Showa inverted fork. It's got about 12 inches of travel and it is fully adjustable. Around back, you also have a Showa ProLink monoshock, also fully adjustable, also gives you around 12 inches of travel. Something that I noticed initially when I hopped on this bike is that the throttle, the initial part of the throttle before you're really moving much at all, just when you let the clutch out, seems really aggressive, which I would think would be a little difficult on super technical single track riding.
That's actually what you're explaining is what just happened to me. And it was on the response side. I feel that just off idle in here, there is some wiggle room as far as it either catching or not catching. And when it catches, it, and when it doesn't, it's bull. So it's really
a little jumpy, a little on-off.
It is.
Especially when it's cold, this bike flames out really easy. What do you think? Is that just because the bike is running too lean?
Super lean.
Okay.
Super lean.
It's a 450. It's got 12.6 inches of ground clearance. The seat height is over 37 inches. It's a big, tall bike, and you're height-wise around 5'8", right?
I'm 5'8".
So what do you think of the size of this bike, and is there anything that a shorter rider can do to make this a little bit more approachable?
Yeah, you know, the shorter rider, if this is your bike, your first bike in a dirt bike slash, you know, dual purpose, it might not be so much fun.
Yeah.
You know, with skills, somebody that even like myself at 5'8", this is just a blast to ride.
But it would be an intimidating size to a new rider.
For sure. When you throw a leg over it, when you are just sitting here like what we're doing right now, I'm flat-footed on 1 foot. There's no
2 feet on the ground.
There's no 2 feet. I mean,
so you said earlier that you wouldn't recommend using like a lowering link to drop the seat height on this motorcycle.
You know, all the years that I've been in the motorcycle industry, a lot of this stuff, people just got to have it that way to ride. And I understand that. It's never an easy transition to do that because the physics of the bike is built on that geometry of how the suspension, how the seat height, everything else. For an average rider, average person, that's what you want to stay with.
Earlier I mentioned that I was going to walk you through all the differences between all the different CRF450s because there are 6 of them. I don't know why I held it up like that, but there is the CRF450RS, CRF450R, and CRF450RWE. All of those are motocross versions of the CRF450, and in that order they get pricier and they have more features from RS to R to RWE. Then you have the CRF450RX, which is more of an enduro style version of the bike. So it's supposed to be a little bit on the lighter weight side, and its suspension and everything is tuned for enduro type riding. You also have the CRF450X. That's the Baja version of the bike. So it has a 6-speed wide ratio transmission, which lets the bike be a little bit better at really high speeds. And then finally you have this is a CRF450RL. It's the street legal dual sport version, and one of the big differences between this and the other bikes in the lineup is that this one weighs 291 pounds. That's 47 pounds more than motocross versions like the CRF450R and RWE. That's a big difference, and a lot of that comes down to some of the modifications that they did to this bike to make it a little bit more streetable, quiet, and compliant. Now, a few extra things that I want to mention about this motorcycle. Something that I really like is the fact that it has this bright LED headlight. It looks good and it is super functional. Same thing with these turn signals. These are also LED. They also look very sharp. Something that I don't like a ton is, for some reason, whoever had this bike before us put tire shine on the tires, which doesn't make any sense to me at all. Another kind of odd item are these massive bags that are on the side of this motorcycle. I don't love the way that it looks, but if you were doing long distance rides, I guess it could make sense. Kind of wish it didn't have these. So Andy, you just went out for a second run. Any different thoughts on how the bike is riding?
Yes, very much so. And that was my thought on going out and doing a little second session, is I went up 1 gear all the way around this 2-mile loop. So whatever I was doing in second, I did in third. Whatever I was in third, I did in fourth. bike was way better, way faster, a lot of grunt, a lot of torque. You know, chain slap and bog, I would get it into and it'd pull right out of it. I was amazed at how much better the thing ran, and quiet. It is just super hockey quiet. It's unbelievable. I really like that part about the bike.
So just leaning into the torque from that big
yeah motor. No, it was fabulous. I really was riding it a little bit more like a dirt bike. I rode it a little bit more like a street bike out there, one gear up, carry momentum a little more, and it just flourished. I bet my lap time went down for sure.
And did the throttle feel any different?
Yes, not any of that. You know, at the very bottom end, no choppy, no is it going to accelerate or not. It was just very smooth and a different transition on the throttle. So that was the way to ride this bike, was one gear up and momentum.
Good.
It was a lot of fun.
Good to know. Just lean into the torque.
Yeah, for sure. I was really surprised. I thought it wasn't going to have that kind of torque, but it sure did. It was great.
Really appreciate you taking this bike out. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't too much of a chore.
No, like I said, you don't have to ask me twice to come out here and ride, guys. So
yeah, so thanks again for giving us your perspective on the bike. It's great to see an expert who's been in this industry for a long time give it the rundown.
It's again, you know, you can't go wrong with Honda. They're just kind of one of those companies.
This particular version of the CRF450 comes in at $10,000, and if you live right near a trail system with only a short section of street to actually ride down, then this could be your perfect solution. If you have a really long way to ride on the road, those maintenance intervals might be a killer. Anyways, that's all for this video. Be sure to go back to tflbike.com, and we'll see you in the next video.